Hello everyone, and welcome back to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. We're thrilled you're here, ready for a story that feels like velvet to the heart. Today we invite you to slip into a modern fairy tale, to drift along a path where reality and dream walk hand in hand, because we're about to relive an anniversary that made us sigh, smile, and believe a little more in love. If you've ever imagined a romantic escape that braids the magic of Paris with moments you'll never stop replaying in your mind, this one is for you. We're going all in, savoring each detail as we revisit Barış Arduç and Elçin Sengu's luminous celebration. Anniversary in Paris, unforgettable tenderness in the City of Lights. Yes, you heard right. We're following this adored pair through their most meaningful milestone, staged in a city where even the air seems to whisper poetry. Before we set off, a gentle reminder from our family at Turkish Spotlight Secrets: if you haven't joined us yet, now's the moment. Hit subscribe so we can keep bringing you stories that inspire, comfort, and rekindle the spark. The little red button is waiting for you, and your support means the world to us. Alright. Deep breath. Buckle in. We're touching down in Paris, where every rooftop glows like a promise and the night seems to lean in, listening. Imagine it for a second. The Eiffel Tower shimmering like a constellation stitched into the sky, the fragrance of warm croissants mingling with the scent of flowers tumbling from balcony boxes, and those distinct murmurs of the city that sound like a lullaby when you're in love. Into this picture walk two people who know how to keep the world small and precious when they look at each other. From the moment Barış and Elçin stepped onto Parisian streets, you could feel the current. A light around them that wasn't from any street lamp. It was the way their hands found each other without trying, the easy laughter that rose when their eyes met, the private language of little glances exchanged like secrets. The first chapter of their celebration set the tone, a sunset cruise along the Seine, elegant and calm, as if time agreed to slow down for them. The sky broke into oranges and rose golds, and the water reflected it all back like a mirror. Barış bent close, smiling in that quiet way of his that always seems to say more than words, and murmured something only Elçin could catch. Whatever it was, it sparked the kind of laugh you don't plan, soft, delighted, free, and it danced right into the hum of Paris, into the distant guitar from a riverside cafe, into the city's heartbeat. Their boat slipped past old bridges and stone embankments, and every ripple, every breeze made it feel like Paris had prepared a private soundtrack for them. Their next stop was the Louvre, but not as a frantic tourist dash. It was purposeful, slow, reverent, a visit that was less about ticking boxes and more about letting art reframe the moment. Before the Mona Lisa, they didn't crowd, didn't pose, didn't hurry. They just stood, close enough for their shoulders to touch. Barış took Elçin's hand with that careful tenderness that has always set him apart, and the hush of that gallery seemed to deepen. He said something quiet, something that brought warmth to her cheeks, an unguarded blush that softened her features and brightened her eyes. She leaned her head against his shoulder and let her eyes close, letting history's hush wrap around them. It felt as if the centuries had gathered to watch two people finding a new memory among old masterpieces. Afternoon drifted toward the Tuileries, and that's where they paused for a picnic that looked stolen from a frame of a film, only better because it was real. A woven basket, French cheeses rich and velvety, a baguette that cracked and sighed under their fingers, a chilled bottle whose bubbles promised celebration. They sat with their shoes nudging the grass and the city passing gently around them. They didn't need spectacle. The joy was in being side by side, sharing a piece of bread, a joke whispered so softly you wouldn't catch it even if you stood next to them. Every touch was casual but certain, a hand on a knee, a thumb brushing away a crumb, a smile that said we are here, we are lucky, we are us. And of course, the Eiffel Tower waited, not just as a sight to admire, but as a witness to something carefully planned. That evening, Barış steered their steps to one of those rarefied restaurants where windows become frames for Paris itself. Lights stretched across the city like spilled jewels, and the tower, luminous and patient, stood in the center of everything. Over dinner, when conversation warmed and the city moved like a breathing backdrop, he produced a small gift. Not flashy. Not meant to shout. Just a delicate pendant, a tiny key wrought with a craft that felt old-fashioned and permanent. His voice trembled a little, the way it does when truth arrives, and he told Elçin what it meant, that it was the key to his heart, that he had carried that door open for her from the start and would never close it. Tears came to her eyes, not the stormy kind, but the shining kind, the ones that blur lights into stars, and she reached for him. They held each other there, with Paris standing guard, and the tower glimmered as if it understood. The next morning brought a different mood, bohemian and free. Montmartre called them up its cobbled lanes, past tiny ateliers and windows filled with paint tubes and brushes. They wandered without hurry, greeting the artists at their easels, pausing to look at sketches drying on strings. Place du Tuileries buzzed with color and chatter, and a painter with kind eyes asked if he could capture them. They agreed, and you could see it in the way they posed, shoulder to shoulder, heads tilted just so that they were thinking about a future wall where that portrait might hang. The artist's hand moved with steady certainty, tracing the curve of her smile, the calm in his gaze, and layering their closeness onto canvas. Later they found a cafe with wicker chairs spilling onto the sidewalk, and they shared macarons bright as confetti, and coffee that cut the sweet with something deeper. They watched Paris go by as if watching a favorite scene in a movie, the kind you never want to end. They wanted a hidden corner of the city too, something quieter than a grand boulevard. So they drifted along one of the lesser-known canals in a small boat, slipping under iron footbridges where ivy curled and windows leaned low. The water made its own soft language against the hull. And there, in that soft in-between space, Barış did something he hadn't planned. He started to sing. It wasn't polished, and it didn't need to be. It was a melody built from this moment alone, a tune that belonged to that boat and that sky and that woman. Elçin watched him with all the fondness in the world, her eyes bright, her hands tucked into his sleeve, as if to hold the sound in place. Some gestures write themselves straight onto the heart. This was one of those. They found themselves, later, in the quiet grace of the Luxembourg Gardens, where fountains talked to themselves and statues seemed to be thinking of old stories. They strolled slowly, letting the hush sink in. He bought her a bouquet from a florist with buckets of blooms in impossible shades, pale ranunculus, tiny garden roses, sprigs of green that smelled like morning. She chose the flowers herself and carried them like a soft talisman, a little garden bound by ribbon. It felt like every moment of the trip was a thread, and together those threads were knotting into something strong and steady. And because celebrations deserve a finale, there was one last surprise. A boutique hotel, chosen with care, with a private terrace that turned the rooftops of Paris into their personal horizon. Dinner arrived like a secret feast, and they ate beneath a sky scattered with lights and possibilities. Later, wrapped in a quiet that belonged to them alone, they talked about what comes next. The dreams that had been following them for years, the plans they had been polishing in private, the way they wanted to keep choosing each other no matter how busy the world became. Gratitude hung between them like a gentle light. They leaned on the terrace rail and watched the city umber and gold and alive. This wasn't only a date circled on a calendar or a pretty sequence of photographs. It was a promise renewed. A decision, again and again, to build memories that would hold when days turned difficult, to weave a future that had room for laughter and silence and the kind of attention that makes another person feel seen. From the tender weight of a sunset on the Seine to the hush around a Da Vinci smile, from the fizz of a shared bottle in the Tuileries to the radiance of a tower that never grows old, from Montmartre's paint-bright energy to the garden paths that soften the city's edge, every scene wrote itself into their story. Watching them, it was easy to forget the noise of everything else and remember the simple truth: when love is real and steady, it shines on its own. Even in a city already famous for light, their connection made its own glow. We were lucky to witness it. Lucky to be invited, in a way, to stand just outside their circle and feel the warmth. If you've walked Paris, you know how it clings to you after you leave. If you haven't, this might be your sign to someday find your own small corner by the river or beneath an iron balcony and let the city teach you how to slow down. For now, though, we cherish this chapter with Barış and Elçin. Two people who understand that romance isn't only grand gestures, but also ordinary moments offered with care. A gift that is small but perfectly chosen. A song that isn't rehearsed but is sincere. A bouquet picked for joy, not for spectacle. A conversation on a terrace where the future feels close enough to touch. And just like that, our journey through their Parisian anniversary comes to a soft landing. We hope you felt it the way we did. The sweetness, the sparkle, the calm that follows when a day has been perfectly spent. Tell us in the comments what part of the trip spoke to you. Was it the way the Seine caught the sunset? The quiet moment before the Mona Lisa? The portrait in Montmartre? The laughter between sips of coffee, or the heartbeat hush of a hidden canal where a song rose without warning? Maybe it was the delicate key, offered not as a display but as a vow. We want to hear your stories too. The journeys that surprised you, the anniversaries that reminded you why you chose who you chose. If this story of Barış Arduç and Elçin Sengu stirred something in you, share it with someone who might need a reminder that love can still astonish us. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets so you won't miss what comes next. We're already working on more tales that glow from within. Until next time, thank you for spending this evening in Paris with us, for letting your heart travel even if your feet stayed home. We'll see you soon, with another chapter, another city, another pair of eyes learning to see the world and wonder again.